Hey guys, John here. In today's video, we are checking out the Blackstar St. James 100 amplifier. It's a beast, it has a lot of power, a lot of tones in it, but it's super lightweight. Let's jump in right away with the demo song. Take a listen. All right, that sounded very good. So that was my Kiesel Kyber 6H with the lithium pickups in it through the Blackstar St. James 100. And then that signal was fed into my Grossmann Fatbox 1x12 cabinet in which I've loaded up my Celestion Vintage 30, which was mic'd up with two SM57s and one MD421, sent into the DAW where I applied a little low cut, and that's the tone you're hearing right there. I like it a lot. Sounds really thick and beautiful and rich. So in this video, we're gonna do my one song, one amp concept a little bit later on, where I tried this amplifier with 10 different guitars and 10 different styles, which should be interesting. And I'm also gonna do a raw playthrough and dialing in and try out all the features that this amplifier has to offer. Anyway, so this is the Blackstar St. James 100 watt version. This one has 4 power tubes, 2 EL34s and 2 6L6s. You can use them together or either one of them. So with this switch over here, the output switch, you can choose between the EL34s, the 6L6s, or a combination of both. And if you choose, either the EL34s or the 6L6s, the volume is going to lower a little bit, obviously, since then you'll turn it into a 50 watt amp probably. We have a power switch and a standby switch, which you can set to silent. And silent mode, you can hook this up to your computer or your mixer or your DAW or whatnot and use the built-in reactive load. So that means that you can use this amplifier without having a real speaker connected, which is nice. And then the line out on the back lets you choose between a bunch of IR settings that you can customize if you want in the Blackstar Cab Rig software. So that's quite powerful. We'll try the stock Cab Rig sounds later in this video. But anyway, on the front, we have 4 channels. We have a clean channel and a crunch channel. The crunch channel has a boost mode. The clean channel has this bright control over here, which is really nice for fine-tuning the brightness or the sparkle of the tone, if you will. Both channels have a volume control. The crunch channel has a gain control. We have a 3-band EQ for the top 2 channels, as well as a presence control and a reverb control. We also have this global master volume control and this power control, which is basically kind of an attenuator. So if you want to get those cranked amplifier sounds at a lower level, you can use that to attenuate the signal. On the bottom row over here, we have an OD1 and an OD2 channel. Both have a gain and a volume control, a 3-band EQ, a presence control, and a reverb control. And then the OD2 channel has this tight switch over here, which I'll let you hear in more detail later in this video as well. It tightens up the tone. So that is cool. 4 channels, and they all sound really different, which is nice. On the back of the amplifier, of course, we have some speaker outs and then also the cab rig output. So the direct out for the reactive load with an XLR out, as well as a line or headphones out. And when you set the amplifier to the silent mode, the master volume control basically acts as your output volume control. And again, as I mentioned, with the cab rig switch, you can choose between 3 different presets that you can change if you hook this up to your computer. Of course, we also have an effects loop that you can set to parallel or series, with a level switch that you can set to either +4 decibels or -10 decibels. And then there's also a solo level tweak control, which is really handy. This amp does come with a nice foot switch that lets you choose between the channels and all that stuff. And it also lets you enable the boost. And with that little control, you can sort of choose the level of the boost, which is nice for solos. And then, of course, we have the foot switch connectivity and the USB connectivity for hooking this up to your computer, and MIDI ins and outs. So that is awesome. So it's quite a full-fledged amplifier, again, in a very lightweight package. So what I'd like to do now is run the amplifier through my 1 song, 1 amp test. It's a song that I recorded to test the versatility of amplifiers, you know, with 10 different guitars, 10 different types of pickups, 10 different tunings, 10 different styles, and all that good stuff, going from clean to 9-string and everything in between. So let's take a listen to that right now with the amplifier hooked up to my real cabinet with my V30 once again, and let's see how well this amp performs. Check it out. All right, really nice. Later in this video, I'll also let you hear the isolated guitars if you want to hear them. Now, for the high gain tones of the St. James 100, there are a couple of things that could be improved upon in my opinion. One thing is that the low-end resonance on this amplifier, especially with the low-end chugs, sometimes is a little bit too much when you're doing the palm muted notes. So a little bit more compression to even things out and a little bit less low-end resonance on those palm muted notes could be a good sort of tweak to the tone for future revisions, in my opinion. And I also think that, especially with the tight mode, the OD2 channel is a little bit undergained, as you can hear, especially in the 8 and 9 string sections. Having a bit more saturation there would also be welcome. What I'm going to do now is hook this thing up to my computer, so with the reactive load, plug in a guitar, and then tweak all the controls so you guys can hear how everything sounds on this amplifier. Take a listen. Hey everybody, I'm sitting here with the Blackstar St. James 100 amplifier and my ESP E2 Eclipse full thickness with the Duncan JB in the bridge and the 59 in the neck, tuned to drop D, I believe. Right now I'm on the OD2 channel, and this amplifier is not hooked up to my cabinet right now. It's actually hooked up directly into my interface using the built-in reactive load with one of the built-in speaker sims. So that is cool. Sounds really nice in my opinion. So before we move on to the front panel and all the channels and the controls, let me just let you hear what sort of sounds are built into the reactive load stock when you get this thing from the box. So I think with the software, the Cab Rig software, I believe it's called, you can sort of customize your cabinet tone. You know, choose speakers, choose the cabinet, choose the mics and all that stuff. But there are 3 presets built in directly into the amplifier. And let's take a listen to how those sound. I think I'm on the 2nd setting right now. Let's switch to the 1st setting and see how that sounds. So that is the 1st setting. Then let's go back to the 2nd setting. That's definitely my favorite one. Let's try the 3rd setting. I think this is a smaller cabinet, or at least a more vintage sounding cabinet. Cool. So let's go back to the 2nd setting, which was my favorite after all. And let's switch to the clean channel, so channel number 1, and let's see what this channel has to offer in terms of tone. So we have a volume control as well as a bright control. Let's dial up the volume a little bit. And let's see what the bright control does. So that's all the way off. Let's turn it up all the way. So that's very nice and sparkly. I like that. So I'm gonna stick with, let's say, 1 or 2 o'clock. Nice clean tone. This amp also has reverb. That is a nice touch for sure. Yeah, cool clean tone. Now, on this top row over here, we also have the crunch channel. So it's like 2 channels per row, if you will. And then this bottom channel has an OD1 and an OD2 channel. We'll get to that in a minute. And then, you know, both channels each have an individual volume control. And then the clean channel has the bright control. And then the crunch channel has a gain and a volume control. And then a shared 3-band EQ, a presence control, and a reverb control. Let's go over to the crunch channel right now, the orange channel, and see what we get. That's a nice crunch tone for sure. I have gain up pretty high right now. Let's see what sort of range we have in terms of the amount of gain. So you can go from like a light crunch or broken up clean, all the way up to a nice British crunch. Cool. That's a nice sounding crunch channel for sure. Let's try out the EQ real quick just to see what sort of, you know, range we have on these controls, starting with the bass control. That's the bass control. Let's do the middle. That's a lot of range. Let's go to the treble control. Interesting. Cool. And then the presence control. All right. Now there is some ambience going on. And that could be from cab rig because I have the reverb turned off all the way now. Yeah, that's with the built-in reverb on. So I think that room reverb that you're hearing must be from the cab rig, which is a nice touch. I think you can dial that in the cab rig software. All right, now the crunch channel also has a boost feature, which I want to try right now. This is without the boost on. And let's turn the boost on. And then off again. So it seems to compress the tone a little bit, if you know what I mean. All right, now let's move on to OD1. So, you know, the first of the higher gain channels, if you will. Very nice indeed. Let's dial down the gain and see what sort of tones we can get. Let's start with, let's say, 12 o'clock. That's a really nice crunch. Let's lower it even further. And let's turn it up. Let's turn it up all the way. That's a sweet high gain tone. Sounds kind of classic, if you will. I have bass at 9 o'clock right now because on the OD2 channel, it was quite sort of boomy in the low end. Let me crank up the bass control. So the bass control definitely can tighten it up if you turn it down. Very nice. All right, let's move on to the OD2 channel, which you already heard earlier during this section. Nicely saturated, very cool, very modern, but still thick, you know. Let's try it with the bass up again so you can hear the difference. Let's turn it up even more. So that's a lot of low end, right? If you're gonna use extreme boosting to tighten this thing up for a modern metal, you might want to turn it up a little bit, because with a boost, you usually take away some low end in front of the amplifier. So that's a lot of low end. I prefer it at around 9 o'clock again. Let's try the middle control. 3 o'clock. I definitely like it with 1 or 2 o'clock. Now let's try the treble control. Let's start at noon. Let's turn it down a little bit. And then let's turn it up to 3 o'clock-ish. Funny thing is that the EQ responds kind of like how my rectifiers would respond. So I like it with the treble up a bit, mids up a bit, and the bass lowered, which is how I would usually dial in especially my dual rectifier. So that's interesting. All right, so the OD2 channel also has this voicing switch, which is the tight switch. It makes the sound quite different. I think it shapes this channel with EQ in front and after the channel. When I enable it, the sound will get louder, so I'm going to have to sort of attenuate the sound with the volume control a little bit. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so that's a bit louder. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of raw. Let's turn up the gain a little bit and turn up the bass a little bit. That is quite satisfying for modern metal and stuff like that. Really cool. Let's try the presence control real quick. So on the OD2 channel, you kind of get an unboosted rectifier-ish sound. And then when you turn the tight switch on, you get a boosted rectifier-ish sound, if you know what I mean. All right, now, this amp lets you choose between the EL34s and the 606s, right? So what you're hearing now is a combination of the two. Let's take a quick listen and then switch to the other modes. All right, so let's switch to the half mode, which has the 606s, so the middle two. Now that's lower in volume. Let me compensate. And then let's switch to the EL34s. Maybe this will be a little bit louder. Yeah, so the EL34s definitely seem to be a little bit louder. Let's do the same thing, but with the tight mode off. So that is the EL34s. And back to the 6L6s. And then let's switch back to mode where all the tubes are enabled. All right, great stuff. Really interesting. So those controls are really cool. As you heard, you can really shape the tone to your liking with this amplifier. It's quite versatile. So I like the Blackstar St. James 100 a lot. I think it's an excellent amplifier with a bunch of great features. The fact that it's lightweight, it's not really important to me. I don't mind having a heavy amp in my studio. I don't need to tour. But if you're a touring musician or if you have like back problems or something like that, I think that can be a great thing. Because I know that a lot of people don't like the fact that a lot of tube amplifiers are so heavy, right? I think each channel has a nice sound in it. The clean channel is nice and sparkly, especially with the bright control turned up a little bit. The crunch channel is nice and organic. The boost is not amazing, in my opinion. It sounds fine without the boost. That's just my preference. OD1 and OD2 sound great. I love OD2 a lot with the tight switch for that modern and tight sound. I like it a lot. For more information, check out the Blackstar website. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And don't forget to drop a like and subscribe, as that will help the channel out. If you want to support this channel and buy one of these amps, please use my affiliate links for Thomann and Sweetwater. I'll put links below. If you want to support the channel in another way, you can get something else there. That would mean a lot. Of course, you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram too. All right, we're going to end this video with the isolated guitars version of that one song, one amp thing. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. See you soon. Cheers.